Hi, welcome back. This is my mid-year book freakout tag. Please ignore any noise that you hear in the background. I can't wait any longer to film this. And there's people in the gardens, there's lawnmowers, there's all sorts going on. So I apologise in advance. This tag, I wasn't sure how much to include or not include, because obviously we're now like partway through July, and really it should be done kind of the end of June, start of July. So I've decided to not include the books that I've read so far in July. It literally will just be books January to June. And I've got the prompts down here to read, so please forgive me for looking down quite a bit. So the first one, the best book you've read so far this year. Without a doubt, I didn't even need to think about this, to be honest. It was just like, I know straight away what the answer to that is, and it's Last One at the Party by Bethany Clift. I spoke about this obviously in one of my wrap-ups. I read a lot of like apocalyptic, virus outbreak, dystopian type stuff, and this is one of those. And I can honestly say this is this is the best I've ever read of that genre. One of the best books I've ever read in my entire life, to be honest. It definitely was quite a bit of a shock when I was reading it. I don't know why, I just wasn't expecting it to be this good. So we follow a woman who ends up being the last person alive after a virus outbreak has wiped out everybody else. And it's about her kind of trying to figure out how to survive when the power goes out, there's no running water, etc, etc. It just was absolutely amazingly written, very relatable, very realistic, and it's all told from like this one character. Obviously she's the only one left, so it's all told from her perspective, and we just kind of get in her head. And I felt every emotion with her. I laughed with her, I cried with her. It was just an incredible experience, the whole thing. I cannot recommend this enough. Even if you're not the type of person who reads a lot of apocalyptic fiction, this is just incredible. It's so good. And I have seen people like hyping it up on social media over the last few months. It really deserves that hype. Just give it a go. Number 2, the best sequel you've read so far. This was another easy one because I've actually only read one sequel, so I didn't have much to choose from. Thankfully, it was a really, really great one, and that is Deathless Divide. This is the sequel to Dread Nation by Justina Ireland. It is Zombie, but it is the zombie apocalypse during the Civil War era in America. Absolutely incredible, the whole series, not just this book. We follow Jane McKean, who is a young black girl, or young adult, who is training to be like an attendant, they call them, who basically, once she's graduated from school or from the training school, she will serve as like a kind of personal guard and protection to posh white people, basically. And she puts her life on the line because black people aren't as valuable to society, apparently. And yeah, it was just fantastic. Like I'm not into historical stuff that much, but getting stuck into that time period, the mentality, the views of people, the kind of like how society was, the like the unspoken rules of mixed race relationships, stuff like that. Absolutely incredible. And again, if you're not the type of person that reads a lot of like zombie stuff, or this is really good to dip your toes into that genre, because it's more about the people and the world around them, as opposed to gore and zombies. I mean, there is some of it in there obviously, but it's not crazy. So yeah, this wasn't a fantastic sequel. I did not want this series to end at all, ever. I'd have just carried on reading it forever. Number 3, a new release you haven't read yet but want to. Now, this was actually a difficult book to choose because the books that I was looking forward to reading most this year, I've read in the first few days of July, so I'm not including those. So I'm going to go with The Momentous Exploration of Tremor Sinclair by Michael F. Stewart. Gosh, that's a mouthful. This is one of those books where I keep like changing my mind on it. I really want to read it. Oh, I'm not too sure. Oh, I really want to read it. I'm not too sure. I got this sent as an ARC after I requested it, so I'm gonna read it at some point. And I just can't decide whether I should prioritise it or not. I mean, it's already been published earlier. I think it was in June, so I am behind anyway. And all I know about this book is that there's a young boy who's kind of like a jock at school. He's really popular, he's into sports, all that kind of stuff. He gets diagnosed with I'm not sure if it is something fatal, like some kind of disease or illness, or if it's just something that will affect him for the rest of his life. I can't remember what it said, but either way, he's like, the stories about how his kind of positioning in with his peers changes, and how all his friends start treating him, how people at school treat him, and I'm so like undecided about whether it's going to be absolutely incredible and really, really heartbreaking, or whether it's going to be just a bit meh. I don't know, and that's what is really like making me not prioritise it for some reason. I think I am going to go for it in August, and hopefully, this sounds crazy, but I hope it breaks my heart. I hope it gives me all the emotions so that I just, oh, I love it. But yeah, so I am actually sort of looking forward to reading that. Number 4, my most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Again, this was kind of ruined by the fact that I've just read them in July, and those were The Gilded Cage by Lynette Nonny, which is the sequel to The Prison Healer, and The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. So I've read those already this month, and those were my 2 most anticipated releases. So the one that kind of comes in very close to those is, I think it's going to be called Monstre Volume 2 by Duncan Swan. I only think that because I've not seen anything about it yet, and the first one was called Monstre Volume 1, so I'm assuming it's Volume 2. But either way, I am super excited for that one to be released, and the publisher told me a few months back that it's going to be round about September time 2021. So Monstre was a complete surprise to me. Sorry, Monstre Volume 1 was a complete surprise to me. I didn't expect it to love it as much as I did. In fact, I wasn't totally sure what it was about before I went in. And it turns out, I've said this so many times, turns out it was kind of like Starship Troopers on acid. It was just insane. It was like a post-apocalyptic thing, and it turns out that the cause of the apocalypse is like these giant alien bugs. We get to see everything happening from different perspectives of people from all around the world. There was this really big kind of sense of dread when you get in the perspective of people where this swarm, or whatever you want to call it, hasn't hit yet, and they know it's coming and they know what's going to happen, and it's just slowly travelling across the globe towards them, and there's nothing they can do. And that was just like, oh, I loved this book so much. Loved it. I raved about it when I read it and reviewed it initially. Cannot wait for the sequel to come out. Right, number 5, biggest disappointment. I am going to there actually was a few I could choose from, unfortunately, but I'm going to go with Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. This was apocalyptic in theory. It really wasn't. It's very, very much literary fiction, and it was just, I struggle with literary fiction just because it's too there's just too much superfluous stuff in there. It's all like, woo, instead of getting to the point and something happening, and that's not, I don't do well with that. So it's there is like some kind of event that happens, and then there's a couple that are renting a chalet from this black couple. I don't understand why they had to be black and white, but I don't know. So there's a white family renting a house from a black couple, and all of a sudden all the radios, the phones, the TV, etc. all are like cut off. They just don't, nothing's working. And this black couple turn up at the cabin and they said, like, we really need our cabin back. I'm sorry, something's going on and we want to escape from like the busier areas of society. And then they all agreed to stay in the cabin together, and the white family aren't sure whether to believe the black couple about what's happening or whether they should go out and figure it out for themselves. That is literally the whole book. That's all that happens in the book. That is it. From memory, you don't even find out what this event apocalyptic thing is. Nobody goes and finds out. Literally the whole book is about them discussing between themselves whether they should do anything about it. And also there are lots of crazy descriptions of various characters' genitals, including the children in the family. It was just really bizarre. I did not like this book at all. It was such a disappointment. I thought it was going to be amazing. It really wasn't. It was just 1 star. In fact, I'd have given it 0 stars if I could. Right, so number 6, the biggest surprise of the year so far. I am going to go with The Prison Healer by Lynette Nonny. That's because this was fantasy, and I don't really do fantasy. I often struggle with fantasy, with all like this really in-depth, detailed world that I just struggle to get my head around enough to then focus on the characters and what's happening. And this was just completely different. So The Prison Healer follows a 17-year-old girl called Kiva. She has been in this death prison called Zalindov for 10 years. And she was sent there as a child with her dad. Her dad was arrested for suspicions of him being a rebel against the current royal family. And she was with him at the time, so they both got sent away. He was the prison healer because he was a healer. She's learnt the trade from him. He's dead, so she's now the prison healer. And one day the rebel queen is captured, sent to the prison, and she has to undergo some trials to prove that she has magic in her system and has a legitimate claim to the throne. However, she's really poorly, can't manage the trial, so Kiva volunteers in her place. And it's just incredible. I loved it far more than I thought I would. I was quite, what's the word? I can't think of the word, my brain's gone blank, but I was quite apprehensive, that's it, about going in case it was just too much for me, but it wasn't. Oh my god, I fell in love with this book. I could not wait for the sequel. I got sent the ARC only 2 weeks ago, and even though it's only due out in October, normally I would have waited to read it till closer time. I could not read it, so I've read that already. Absolutely fantastic, The Prison Healer. I really recommend that one. And then we've got question number 7, your favourite new author. So that could be a debut author or somebody who's new to you. I am going to go with, there were 2 that I'm still right this minute debating, but I'm going to go for Christina Dolce, I think it is. So this was Christina's first novel out, and she so far has written mostly dystopian. And this one is about somehow society has changed to the point where women only have 100 words a day, and they have like a watch kind of thing, but it's a counter, and every time they speak a word, it knocks one off the total, and when they get to 0, that's it, they can't speak. If they speak after that, every time they speak or every word they speak, they get an electric shock, and the electric shocks get stronger and stronger each time they speak. So yeah, it's very Handmaid's Tale type thing, and I absolutely loved it. This wasn't the first Christina Dolce book I read. I read Q. I think it's called something else in America. I say this every time. Can't think. And that is about how people are assessed in society dependent on their like IQ and their performance in the jobs or at school, and then that tells you how valuable they are to society. And everyone who falls below a certain level gets shipped off to like slave labour camps. Absolutely fantastic. I love dystopian, absolutely love it. And Christina Dolce is definitely like one of the queens of dystopian. She is just amazing, and I cannot read her next book that I've got an arc of, but it's only due out towards the end of the year, and that's called Femlandia. And again, it's another like feminist type dystopian thing. Cannot wait. I'm convinced it's going to be 5-star already. Right, okay, so number 8, newest fictional crush. Jaren. It's got to be Jaren out of the prison healer. He is a guy who gets taken into the prison, and he becomes friends with Kiva, and yeah, he's just like, I want a boyfriend like Jaren, I really do. He's just determined for her to fall in love with him and think he's amazing no matter what, no matter how much she resists. He's just like so perfect, and he's friendly and he's helpful and he's sacrificing things for her, and he's just understanding. He's just amazing. Yeah, I love Jaren, basically. Jaren. Right. Newest favourite character. Oh, I decided to go with Jane McKean out of Dread Nation. I know I've discussed this series already. Jane McKean was just amazing as a character. She was very much I want to kind of just relate her to Katniss out of the Hunger Games, because that kind of tells you how much of like she's willing to stand up for other people regardless of whether it's going to get her in trouble. She wants to fight against the current system of how people are treated based on their colour. She thinks people should be, you know, treated well dependent on their character, you know, the kind of person they are, which that's correct. She's kind of like fighting and leading other people against the current rulers. She was just incredible. She's one of these characters that you can just see doesn't sit back and let things happen. She just, you know what, this isn't right, I'm going to do something about it. She was just crazy and so strong and so brave. I just loved her. Right, number 10, a book that made you cry. The Boy at the Back of the Class by Anjali Q. Ralph. Yes, this is a children's book, and yes, it did make me cry several times. This is about a refugee boy who appears at the back of the classroom one day. All the other children don't know why he's there, and eventually, over time, there's a small group that become really good friends with him, and then the whole class gradually find out his story of what happened, where he's come from, why he's got no family in England, why he's a refugee, that kind of stuff. I'm not going to tell you about any of that because you have to learn it as the book goes on. That's part of the story. But yeah, it broke my heart in places, literally crying. I read this twice in March. I read it once for middle grade March for myself, and then my 6-year-old wanted me to read it to him at bedtime. And so we did a chapter a night, and he was crying at the bits that I did, and I was crying again, even though I knew what was happening. But yeah, it's just so, it's just beautiful and so well written. And adults and kids would love this. I really do recommend this. Right, a book that made you happy. Do you know what? This was quite hard because I don't really read a lot of happy books. And so what makes me happy is like really gruesome stuff. But I've tried to not go for that. I've tried to kind of say, this is more mainstream, this book. And it's Counting by Sevens by Holly Goldberg Sloan. And it's more of a book that lots of people would read rather than like the gruesome, dark stuff that I read. And it was just, I mean, it's sad at the beginning because the young girl in it, she has got autism or something very similar, some kind of, I think she's on the spectrum, definitely. She's got some sensory issues as well, and her parents pass away, and she then has to kind of like navigate her new life, a new routine, living with foster family, things like that. And so even though that's sad, it made me happy in that this girl, this character, was so strong emotionally and mentally. She managed to kind of get over the difficulties, and in doing so, and in being just herself, She managed to change other people's lives around her, adults. She was like making their lives better just by being herself, and that made me smile, because it was so lovely to see that she was just helping other people all the time. Even though she was going through such difficult stuff, she was still helping others, and that was just beautiful. And yeah, that really made me smile, that bit. So I'm going for that one. Right, so number 12, the most beautiful book you've bought or received so far this year. Again, this is one that I really struggled with, because I don't read the kind of books that would have beautiful covers. I honestly searched every book, and I was just like, I don't own any. So I've had to kind of go with my take on beautiful, and go with Paperbacks from Hell by Grady Hendrix. Now, I know it's not beautiful as such, but I just think this cover is absolutely amazing. This book it's non-fiction, and it's Grady Hendrix kind of discussing and analysing all the different subgenre types of horror that was brought out in the 70s and 80s. So we've got some examples of the covers there, and then all through he's talking about different types of horror. So there's like insect horror, which is my favourite. There is like ghost stories, there's demons, there is, I'm trying to think now, there's like hell and exorcisms and all that kind of, so there's lots of different types. My brain's gone blank. So yeah, it talks about all the different types of books and the best ones in those subgenres and stuff. I just think this cover is amazing. I just can't stop looking at it, and I can't wait to read parts of the book. And so, last question. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? Now, I actually, towards the end of last year, I made myself a priority list. And I was like, do you know what? These books I need to read by the end of 2021. And I prioritised, and I've made sure throughout the year so far that I've read 1 or 2 books each month off that priority list. However, it turns out that there's more books on the priority list than I can fit in. So I'm like prioritising the priority list. But I've got a handful of books here that I've chosen that these are like top priority of the priority books. And so I'm going to start with Skitter, they go that way. Skitter and 0 Day. This one was in my July TBR, so I will be reading this. I am partway through an arc. As soon as I've finished it, this is my next book. These are a series about flesh-eating spiders. Yay! And it was just fantastic. I've got, just off screen, I've got the hatching just up there. That was the first book. Absolutely amazing. I'm looking forward to reading this, and then I'm going to try and fit this in August maybe. Then I've got the Adam Kay books. Now, I talk a lot about medical memoirs. I absolutely love them. Yet these are the 2 most well-known or 2 most read medical memoirs, and I've not read them at all. And I've owned them for quite some time. So I think I'm finally going to get round to reading Adam Kay's This Is Going to Hurt, and then this really tiny one, 'Twas the Night Shift Before Christmas. I need to get these in at some point this year. Everybody goes on about them. Apparently they're amazing. So I am looking forward to them. And then, now this one, Hope in Hell by Dan Bortolotti. This is about life inside Doctors Without Borders. I am so looking forward to this. I had to get this shipped over from America because nobody in the UK was selling it. And that's all I know about it, but I cannot wait. I think this is just going to be incredible, heartbreaking, hopeful, everything all at the same time. It just sounds like something that, it's just, obviously I'll never experience that myself, and I just cannot wait. And then another medical memoir, Ask Me Why I Hurt, The Kids Nobody Wants and the Doctor Who Heals Them by Randy Christensen. This is about a doctor who set up a mobile clinic, and all his patients are homeless adolescents and children. He is a paediatrician, but he only focuses on homeless children, and yeah, that sounds just incredible. And yes, I'll probably cry whilst I read that, but I cannot wait to read it. Again, that's another ad to get shipped over from America. Now, the last book I'm going to tell you about, I really do want to read this, but I don't know if I'm going to fit it in. Because it's huge. It's absolutely huge. The Swarm by Frank Schatzing, don't know. Now, this is, I know very little about this. This is some kind of horror story about a swarm of fish that like start killing people. And the only reason I picked this up is because I actually, fun fact, have a pretty decent phobia of fish, even goldfish in a bowl in a house. I don't do fish. They freak me out. They breathe underwater and they stare at you, and yeah, I've got goosebumps just thinking about them. So yeah, I am terrified of fish. So I think this actually will be a really scary horror story for me because it's about fish. And then part of me thinks maybe I shouldn't read it because then I'll probably never get into a swimming pool or in the sea ever again in my life. I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to try and fit it in at some point. So that is all the questions and all the books I'm going to tell you about. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all soon in another video. Bye.